Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Today, we are continuing ranking every single team, and we are entering a new category. We are entering into teams where every single one of these teams we're about to talk about, not only are their fans insistent on them making the playoffs, it would be viewed as a negative if these teams failed to win a playoff game. So we're entering those tiers, right? And starting off with number 18, that just goes to show you, I think, how many teams in the league right now are building and are moving in the right direction. And all three of these teams I'm about to talk about have their franchise quarterback. So I think that's the biggest factor, to be honest. If you look at it right now, I don't know about historically, but it feels like right now an extremely high amount of teams have quarterbacks where, regardless of how you feel about them, the teams are shelling out big time money to these guys. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. Starting off with number 18, this is where I have, give it 1 second to load, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, in regards to recent years, I think you could make the argument that this is a little bit low for the Niners. I mean, this is a team who, outside of last year, has been a contender every season pretty much since Kyle Shanahan has been there. Now, that's not really the case when you kind of break it down and analyze it. Garoppolo years, for example, they were not as good. But since Brock Purdy has stepped in, I mean, the first year, obviously, 2022, and then 2023, they were extreme contenders, made the Super Bowl in 2023. So if I'm not thinking about, yeah, I'm thinking about that right. So they have been up there, right? So this would be the lowest I think that they would be ranked, in my opinion, to start the season, and who knows how long, several years, right? But I think there are some good reasons for that. And starting off with last season, how much value do you put into last season if you're analyzing the Niners, right? Because they were still a top 10 offense in the league, even with all the injuries that they had. Obviously, losing McCaffrey, that's the most important player on this entire offense, arguably. They also dealt with Trent Williams missing a lot of time, Brandon Ayuk as well. They didn't have Ricky Pearsall the first half of the season. So the offense, I think, considering all that, it is still pretty impressive what Brock Purdy was able to do, leading them to be relatively successful. But he got a lot of flack because his play obviously did dip, considering, I mean, this is the thing, man. His top three weapons from the previous season, Ayuk, Debo Samuel, McCaffrey, were all pretty much non-existent. Obviously, Kittle was still there, and he was massive last year. Jawan Jennings took a big step up and became a premier receiver for them. And they had, different running backs step up, but he also had Trent Williams, your premier, arguably best offensive lineman in the entire league, missed time last year. So Brock Purdy dealt with a lot last season. He caught a lot of flack, but I do think overall it was not a bad season that he had individually. Now, defensively, this was the Niners' worst defense since 2018. And maybe you can contribute or attribute rather a lot of that to having Brandon Staley as the defensive coordinator. There are people who really think this guy should not be in the league. He's that bad of a coordinator. And I mean the numbers kind of prove it. He took this Niners defense to depths that they had not been in a long time. Now they do get Robert Saleh back as the new, or I guess yet again, their defensive coordinator. Obviously, we know how good they were the first time around when he was coaching them, so maybe that's a reason for some optimism there on the defensive side of the ball. But they also do lose a bunch of players, so let's get into exactly what they were last season. If you look at the quarterback play, obviously Brock did miss 2 games, but the games he played, it was his worst individual season, considering 2022 he played about half the year, 2023 he played the full season and was honestly amazing in 2023. But last year, not the case. The touchdown to interception ratio, not what you want to see whatsoever. Also, I mean, he had 19 turnovers in total when you conflict interception and fumbles, and he only had 25 total touchdowns. That's not a good ratio. The passer rating, though, was still above average. But yeah, game winning drives, fourth quarter comebacks, ranking fairly low in just about every stat you can think of. Like I mentioned, George Kittle, Jawan Jennings, those were your heroes from last season, right? Jordan Mason also started off the season really well, but I think Isaac Guerendo kind of finished it out strong as well. And then you do lose a couple guys. I mean, Debo Samuel, he's out the door now. Um, Same with Jordan Mason as well. So between Mason and Debo, that's what 1,700 yards you got to replace. I mean, you can make the argument McCaffrey's going to do that himself next season. But it is worth mentioning you do lose a couple players here. Now, defensively, let's just run through the list of guys, right, that you lose from last season. Let's start from the top in terms of tackles. Devondre Campbell quit mid-season. You could make the argument that's not even really that big of a loss, but he did quit mid-season. He's off the team. Charvarius Ward. Obviously, he had a down year, I would say. A lot of that having to do with the devastating slash unfortunate circumstances regarding his family and the death of his daughter. So I mean, you can't even really put that much on him, but you do lose Charvarius Ward. He was arguably the best cornerback in football in 2023. That's a major loss. Isaac Yiadom, he played a lot last season, was not exceptional, but he was a starting cornerback for you. You lose him. Leonard Floyd, the Leonard Floyd shit, they got rid of him based on the assumption that they would bring in Joey Bosa, but they didn't bring in Joey Bosa. So now you just lose your second best pass rusher after Nick Bosa for no reason. The Leonard Floyd uh, release was just mind-boggling, in my opinion. That's a major loss right there, losing Leonard Floyd. Hufanga, he's off the team now. He only played 7 games, but obviously we all know what he can do when he's out there and he's healthy. That's going to hurt moving forward. Malik Collins, he got 5 sacks for you as an interior defensive lineman. He's off to play for the Browns, if I'm not mistaken. Also, who else they lose? They lost Dre Greenlaw. He hardly played at all last season, but yet again, that's just another guy off the team. Same exact situation with Javon Hargrave. He was big for them in 2023, got hurt, did not play a lot last season. So the defense, just like the offense, and this is the situation with the entire Niners franchise, they deal with more injuries, it seems like, than anybody else in the league. But as a result of that, they are constantly having to, do a bunch of roster turnover. And also on top of that, Malik Mustafa, kind of a breakout safety for them last season. He stepped up massively during the absence of Talanoa Hufanga. He tore his ACL, I believe, in the last game of the season. So, I mean, at best, he's going to miss what, half of this season? So, man, you could spend a 10-minute video just breaking down all the injuries the Niners deal with year after year. And in terms of additions, they did not make enough, in my opinion, to compensate for the loss. And keep in mind, this was a bad defense last year, especially by Niners standards, and they lose a bunch of their key players. I have I have expectations the Niners will improve offensively, or at least be without a shadow of a doubt a top 10 offense next year. As long as you got Purdy, what's the guy's name? Kyle Shanahan and McCaffrey, I assume it's going to be a top 10 offense. But defensively, I'm not certain it's going to get back to what it used to be just because you bring in Robert Saleh. Of course, you still have the established guys like Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, but in terms of complementary, close to Pro Bowl level supporting players, they don't have that many anymore. Let's take a look at this new and improved depth chart. Um, Offensively, a lot of similar names. Brock Purdy comes back. McCaffrey. You still got Kyle Juszczyk, the most effective fullback in football, probably. George Kittle. A lot of recognizable returning Pro Bowl talent. You recognize and remember off the Niners. Now let's talk about the offensive line. Let me flip over to that page where I have done my thorough research on every single offensive line in the league. Give me 1 second here. So the Niners, obviously, getting Trent Williams back healthy is a key for them. When he's healthy, he's one of, if not the best players in all of football. Now, you start Ben Bartch at left guard. Keep in mind, the Niners do lose 2 of their, I would say, stars. They lose their left guard, Aaron Banks. He goes to the Packers. They do also lose their swing tackle. Forget his name, but he went to play for the Chiefs. So you start Ben Bartch at left guard. Has not played a lot of football. In 2023, he played about 240 snaps. And in those snaps, he was average at best. So you notably get worse at left guard. That is a downgrade. Jake Brendel for you played about over 1,000 snaps last season. As a center, too many penalties, 10 penalties last season. Did not give up a whole lot of sacks. I would say he's slightly above average. Good run blocker. Jake Brendel. Dominic Pooney, he was a standout pick for you last season. The Niners absolutely hit on this third-round pick last year out of Kansas. He played over 1,000 snaps as a rookie and was already at a near Pro Bowl level in his first season. So Dominic Pooney, he's one of those guys where you keep your eyes on and saying this guy could be a stalwart player on our offensive line going forward. So a healthy Dominic Pooney, Trent Williams, those are some big level guys at their position. And then Colton McKivitz replaced what's his name, Mike McGlinchey after he left last offseason. And in his first season as a starter at right tackle, played over 1,000 snaps, pretty healthy, and had above average to good grades. I would say he's a good right tackle. So I think you're really happy with what you have at the tackle positions. Dominic Pooney, you love what you have there, but the center and the left guard are areas of concern, in my opinion, for the Niners. Now, the wide receiver room. It's really interesting here. I don't know what to think because just based off last season, I would have Jawan Jennings as their best returning receiver. Ricky Pearsall made a lot of plays, especially in the last month of the season. I feel like Ricky Pearsall was coming on very strong as their kind of shocker first round pick from last season. Brandon Ayuk, man, a lot of Niners fans are really regretting the contract they gave him last offseason. He kind of held them hostage, got the money, and then he was terrible. When he was out there last season, the first half of last year, he was terrible. Then obviously he suffered a major injury, hoping he comes back healthy. I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but man, he was looking terrible when he was out there last season. Appears, from my outside perspective, he has lost all motivation after he got paid. Now, maybe getting hurt kind of light a fire under him. Maybe he comes back and listen, even if he is 80% of what he was fully healthy, that's a pretty good trio of receivers to have at your top of the line. Now, you do have two young guys, Jordan Watkins, Jacob Cowing, who could potentially be some, what do they call them? Guys off the bench, like microwaves off the bench, could make some things happen for you. And then Demarcus Robinson is your big time addition, well, relatively big time addition from the Rams. If they do deal with injuries, whether it's Ricky Pearsall, Brian Ayuk, I feel like Demarcus Robinson coming in as your wide receiver three, you don't lose much there. So overall, I think I'm pretty confident that they have a good receiving room. Also, add into the fact that they have George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, one of the best, if not the best, tight ends, and one of, if not the best, receiving backs in football. I'm not worried about their pass game whatsoever. The Niners, like I said, should be a top 10 offense and could even be a top 6 or 7 offense, depending on everybody's health. So I'm not worried about their offense at all. Defensively is where I have massive concerns here. Like I said earlier, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, we know what these guys are going to do. They are future Hall of Famers. Everybody else, I mean, the fact that the Niners have 5 new starters, well, let me say, well, yeah, it's gonna be 5 new starters because of Malik Mustafa, but 5 new starters on this defense should tell you everything you need to know. The fact that 3 of them are rookies should be a major red flag, but they did bring in Bryce Huff. Let me talk about the Bryce Huff addition from the Eagles. I do like this move because I'll tell you why. Bryce Huff 2 years ago, it's not like 5 years ago. 2 years ago, Bryce Huff with Robert Saleh was a premier pass rusher. Obviously, he was a specialist. He's not good against the run, but when he comes down in obvious passing situations, he adds something to this team. Could the reuniting of Bryce Huff and Robert Saleh make up for the loss of Leonard Floyd via free agency? I think it's possible. Now they're paying him a lot of money because the Eagles gave him a big contract last season. But if he is what he was in 2023, I think he's worth that money. So we got to keep an eye on the Bryce Huff situation. But Alfred Collins, Michael Williams, they draft both those guys. The first 2 rounds, they become instant starters. We do not know. We have no idea what they're going to look like in their first season, so I'm not even going to try and predict that. Overall, I think their defensive tackle position is pretty weak, especially considering you lose Javon Hargrave and Malik Collins. Now, the linebacker position outside of Fred Warner, you got Dee Winters, who you spent the 6th round pick on in 2023. Nick Barton, you drafted him in the 3rd round. Losing Dre Greenlaw, it's major question marks. You bring in Trey Brown from the Seahawks. Brother, let me tell you something right now. You don't want Trey Brown starting for you. Do not want Trey Brown starting for you as your top cornerback. And overall, without Jarvarius Ward and also losing Idek Yadam, I think this 49ers secondary is the worst I've seen in a long, long time because it's going to be what? Trey Brown, Jair Brown, who? Jason Pinnock, Renardo Green, who was really good as a rookie, by the way. I have to add that in. Renardo Green, as a rookie, was really good, and Lenore is solid. This secondary could struggle. If you play the Niners the first half, first month of the season, I expect them to get torched by at least 1 or 2 teams. So overall, I think they're a top 10 or so offense with arguably a bottom 10 defense. Outside of Bosa and Fred Warner, they don't have a single player, with the exception of maybe Bryce Huff, who I could see being a Pro Bowler next year. I think Jair Brown has some potential. I think he was solid last season. Renardo Green, same thing, but they're young guys who still need to take steps forward. So I don't like what I see with the Niners defense. Now, here's the overall breakdown. Quarterback, I think it's the same player I think he will have a better season. So you could make the case that their quarterback position will get better just because of, having better players around him next season. I do think we're going to see more of what we saw in 2023, Brock Purdy. So I do think they have a good quarterback situation. Wide receiver, I mentioned it, getting Ayuk back healthy, getting Pearsall back healthy, adding Demarcus Robinson and a couple young guys. I do think that wide receiver room gets better overall. Running back, just getting healthy McCaffrey back is worth two arrows by itself. I mean, when he's healthy, McCaffrey, arguably the best running back in football. The problem is every other season he's hurt. So healthy McCaffrey, hopefully, will make them yet again a dominant offense. Kittle comes back, same tight end. Offensive line, you lose two stars. They do get worse on the offensive line. Now, you could make the case Trent Williams being healthy is it overcomes all of that. Now, Trent Williams in his late 30s. Can you guarantee to me that Trent Williams is going to be healthy? I don't think you can do that. So I think offensive line gets slightly worse. Defensive line, you could have made a case. You could have made a real case that defensive line got worse, but losing Javon Hargrave is not really that big of a loss because he only played two games. So I'm looking at the Leonard Floyd loss, Bryce Huff addition, adding in Alfred Collins and Michael Williams. Overall defensive line, I think stays about the same. Linebacker, you lose Dre Greenlaw, that's a loss, but he hardly played last season. So losing Dre Greenlaw, adding Nick Martin via the draft, again, similar situation with the defensive line. Safety cornerback, I think like not debatable. They got worse in their secondary. You lose Charvarius Ward and Hufanga, and also Malik Mustafa's injury. Their secondary is going to be very, very questionable next season, especially until Malik Mustafa comes back healthy. So, yeah, overall, Niners, I have them in that range of teams. I have them as the third best team in the NFC West. They just have too many question marks compared to teams like the Rams and the Seahawks. And they were last. They were last season. They got swept by the Cardinals. I am sorry. If you're a team getting swept by the Cardinals, have been the laughingstock of the NFC West for the better part of a decade, if you're getting swept by the Cardinals, I did them a favor putting them ahead of the Cardinals. If we're just basing this based off last season, they should start off in last place. But I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm putting them ahead of the Cardinals. I think they could and probably should win 9 or 10 games, but they're in a really tough division. And, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for the Niners, especially defensively. Moving on. I have the Cowboys at number 17. Now, similar to the Niners, they had a real down year in comparison to what like their own expectations have been the last several seasons. Under Mike McCarthy, by the way, did they not have three straight 12-win seasons? I mean, that should not go under the radar. I mean, I know McCarthy got like memed a lot and shit on just because he's the Cowboys coach, but winning three straight 12-win seasons, even though it was a 17-game season, that is impressive. And I don't know how many times that's been done in NFL history. That is a really good period of time, okay, for the Cowboys. And let's also not forget in 2023, Dak Prescott was arguably the best quarterback in football. Just numbers wise, he blew Lamar Jackson out of the water. Like it wasn't even close, just based off the numbers. But Lamar somehow won MVP, but didn't win MVP last year. It makes no sense. But healthy Dak Prescott should pretty much guarantee that they win a good amount of games, right? But they went 3-5 last season with Dak. So I don't know if that's the case anymore because if you don't know, the Cowboys were a bottom three defense in football last year. Maybe that has to do with some injuries to key players, but they sucked. They were terrible last year defensively. And it looks like without Dan Quinn, they don't know what they're doing on that side of the ball. They were also below average offensively. Maybe you can attribute to that being because Dak missed half the year, but I mean, hell, Dak has missed 26 games over the last 5 years. Now, they were still able to overcome that in the majority of Mike McCarthy's time, but if we're talking about QBs with real injury concerns, it's Tua, I mean, how many names do you get to before you get to Dak? I mean, he would be in the top three undeniably, I feel like, just based off games missed. Dak is a real injury concern at this point. And let's start talking about what they were last year. So obviously, 8 games for Dak. I mean, I guess technically 8 for Cooper Rush. I think they also got Trey Lance in there to start games. They had bad quarterback play. Even when Dak was out there, he was not looking good. And I think you can attribute a lot of that to the offensive line struggling with Zach Martin's health. And now Zach Martin's just gone. Overall, the Cowboys have a really young offensive line, and now they get even younger. And just in terms of skill players, I mean, it was noticeably bad last season. I mean, Rico Dowdle, by the way, came on really strong. I don't think anybody was expecting him to be as good as he was, but they also lose him via free agency just for no reason. So outside of CD Lamb, the Cowboys did not really have a whole lot to work with. I mean, Keontae Turpin had to be a key contributor for them. Jake Ferguson, the tight end, he's not bad, but man, you had washed, and I mean washed, Ezekiel Elliott and Brandon Cooks kind of limping to the finish line. By the way, the Cowboys spent a second round pick on Luke Schoonmaker. Tell me how that worked out for you. They just don't have a lot of difference makers at the running back and wide receiver groups, and they lost their best running back in terms of Rico Dowdle. So they needed to make additions or just changes overall, and I feel like they did defensively. I mean, listen, Deron Bland was an All Pro last year. He missed 10 games. Uh, Trevon Diggs was an All Pro. He missed. Where even is he? Is he even on here? He missed. He might have missed so many games that he's not even on here. Trayvon Diggs, massive injury concerns the last 2 seasons. He's missed like a whole season and a half the last 2 years. There's just not a lot of good things to talk about for the Cowboys. DeMarvion Overshown obviously has dealt with major injury concerns in his career. I mean, outside of Micah Parsons, it's just not a lot. Did they have a single Pro Bowl? Trayvon Diggs, by the way, he played 11 games last year. So he missed 6 games. Bland missed 11, or 10 rather. It's just they hardly played together at all. And outside of Micah Parsons, they did not have any significant pass rushers. By the way, they spent a first round pick on Mozzie Smith. So that draft overall is kind of holding the Cowboys back a little bit at the moment. They needed to make changes. They fired Mike McCarthy, brought in Brian Schottenheimer, first year head coach. How much change will that make? I'm not so sure because it's the defense that needs more change than the offense does. I mean, if we're just being honest here. Let's talk about now what it looks like going forward offensively. Quarterback comes back, obviously, Dak. You do have Joe Milton as a backup. That's pretty underrated, in my opinion. And we're talking about Dak's injury concerns. We know how good Joe Milton looked last year in limited time in New England. Let's just say hypothetically, the Cowboys missed the playoffs last year. Dak gets hurt, typically like he does. He misses 4 or 5 games. If Joe Milton comes in those 4 or 5 games and looks better than Dak, there are some massive discussions being had next offseason surrounding Dak and Joe Milton. And by the way, I think they could get something in return for Dak. Like, and just in terms of you look around the league, would there be a team out there somewhere who would give up a second or third round pick for Dak Prescott? If you think, if let me put it like this, if Geno Smith gets you a third round pick in today's market, I would think Dak Prescott gets at least a good second round pick, maybe even a first. So there is a real situation where I think after this season, next offseason, the Cowboys move on from Dak and roll with Joe Milton. I think that's possible. But assuming Dak stays healthy and he just plays like he plays normally, which is above average or really good, Javonte Williams, Jaden Blue, Miles Sanders, 3 new running backs, none of which are as good as Rico Dowdle, in my opinion. Javonte Williams, you would assume, is going to be RB1 because he has had the most NFL success in his career, aside from Miles Sanders. He's been really bad the last 2 years on Carolina. The Cowboys arguably have the worst running back room in football. Actually, I don't think it's arguable. They have the worst running back room in football. Now, back in the day, their offensive line was so loaded that it just improved, or it made any running back look great. And you could say last year, Rico Dowdle played above his means because it was just the Cowboys and their offensive line. I'm not so sure about that. Now, they've spent 3 first-round picks on this offensive line. They got 3 Tylers starting. Let me switch over and look at the Cowboys' offensive line. It's not bad, though. Just because they're young, they do have several guys who I look at and I think, okay, just because they're young, they still are pretty good overall. Let me scroll over here to the Cowboys. So Tyler Guyton, left tackle, he was rough. He was really bad last season. 18 penalties, 6 sacks allowed, PFF grade below a 50. He was bad. He was terrible last season. He needs to make massive strides. I'll give him a pass since he was a rookie. But man, if you're telling me a bad player last year going into season 2 playing left tackle, I would be very concerned about Tyler Guyton next season. Tyler Smith last year played over 1,000 snaps. He was really good, not just good. He was near Pro Bowl level last season as a guard. Cooper Beebe, in his first season, he was an above average center. Now, if you would, if he has a normal type of progression, and you could make a case, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, both damn near Pro Bowl level players on the interior. Tyler Booker, you draft him to replace Zach Martin. I like the pick. I think he's a high end guy. I think he comes in right away and he's either good or very good. I think the Cowboys' interior, and as a result, hopefully their run game should be the strength. Well, I think you're hoping it's a strength of this offense going forward. And then Terrence Steele playing right tackle, 9 sacks allowed. You don't love to see that. But even with that being said, he's a really good run blocker, obviously struggles against the pass. Overall, above average right tackle. But if you have Terrence Steele giving up a bunch of sacks and Tyler Guyton playing as bad as he played, we could have like the biggest difference in terms of interior offensive line and your tackles in the entire NFL. Interesting situation here with the Cowboys. But I mentioned earlier that they needed to make moves in terms of adding more playmakers to this offense. They went out and got George Pickens. Now, I suddenly liked the Cowboys receiving room a whole lot more than I did before because you got CeeDee Lamb as your true alpha, premier, all pro number one receiver. George Pickens kind of as that 1B, really, really good number two. You would assume both those guys could work together. George Pickens more outside, CD moving all around. And then Jalen Tolbert as a good wide receiver three. He had a good season last year. Hopefully, he could not, fall off the cliff just because they added George Pickens. And then KaVontae Turpin coming in as kind of your gadget guy, good wide receiver four. You want to get him the ball a whole lot of different ways. So suddenly, I like the Cowboys pass game on paper, especially with the healthy Dak Prescott. If he can be 90% of what he was in 2023, they feel probably really good about this offense. And I would assume that it would be top 12, top 14 in the league, but they need to make strides defensively. Like it does not matter what they do offensively if this defense does not take massive steps in the right direction. Now, they did add several players here, most notably being Dante Fowler. Now he did play there in the past. Last season, obviously, he spent with the Commanders, in which he had not a breakout year because he's had multiple 10 sack seasons, but he had a 10 sack season last year with the Commanders. Now the Cowboys bring him in, so that should at least on paper make up for the losses of Chauncey Golston and Carl Lawson. So you would hope. I'm talking way too fast. You would hope that Dante Fowler combined with Micah Parsons should be a dominant pass duo. They combine for 20 plus sacks, all that good stuff. Now, the interior. Mozzie Smith is a bust. I mean, he's had 2 seasons. He brings nothing in the pass rush, and he's not a good run defender either, so he's just useless in my opinion. Osa Odigizua, they paid him a lot of money to come back, and I mean, I'm not saying he's bad, but I don't know if I would pay that much money for interior defensive lineman who doesn't get after the passer. How many sacks do you have last? 1 second. How many sacks did he have last season? Osa Odigizua. 4.5. That's not bad, actually. Okay, I don't mind the contract all of a sudden. But overall, I think their interior of the defensive line is rather weak. They do bring in Solomon Thomas, who had a not bad stint with the Jets. I think he still has a little bit of potential. Obviously, he was like a top 3 pick by the Niners a couple years ago. He was a bust, but I think he's still a guy who, similar to Caleb on Chason, he could be a good rotational pass rusher, even if he didn't break into what people thought he could be. Also, Donovan Ezeraku in the draft. A lot of people very high on this guy. If you polled 100 different people, there's going to be a lot of people who had Donovan Ezeraku in their top 20 players overall in the draft. So keep an eye on him. He could be a guy who has a breakout rookie season and adds a lot to this Cowboys pass rush. That was a really good pick in the second round by them. DeMarvion Overshown, when he's healthy, when he's out there, he's a good linebacker. The problem is he has dealt with a massive amount of injuries in his career. Who knows if he is healthy, is he even going to be a good player anymore? He's had that many type of major injuries. Now, they bring in Kenneth Murray from the Titans. I like Kenneth Murray overall, former first round pick by the Chargers. I just don't know. At this point, it's his third stop. Does he still have it? And if he's your best linebacker, I think you should be pretty concerned about your linebacker room. Obviously, Trayvon Diggs, DaRon Bland both have major injury concerns. I don't know what is going to happen with them. And they drafted a guy in Chavon Rebel who's coming off his own major injury. I believe he tore his ACL early last season. So your top 3 cornerbacks, in my opinion, all are major red flags in terms of injuries. Kaiir Elam, he's a bust, former first-round pick. They bring him in from the Bills. He was never able to be a good cornerback for them. Is a change of scenery going to fix that for him? I have no idea. Their duo of safeties, I like it. Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, it's like the definition of average. Neither of them I'm concerned with, but I don't think either of them are really difference makers for you. So yeah, I don't love any aspect of this Cowboys defense, but if they're just healthy, like if you just guarantee me that they're going to be healthy, if nothing else, I think Trayvon Diggs, DaRon Bland, Micah Parsons, Dante Fowler, those are enough difference makers that you would hope guys like Overshown, Ezeraku, maybe Chavon Revel, Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, you would hope that they have enough guys, Osa Odigizua, they have enough guys to make them average. If the Cowboys are the 18th best defense last year and the 14th or 13th best offense. I mean, the Rams were worse than that last year, and they won 10 games. So, I mean, all you got to do is be good situationally at that point. I feel like you're cooking. So, I do have the Cowboys above the Niners. That might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think why do I have the Niners above or below the Cowboys? I mean, the Niners have to overcome a lot of injury concerns, and both of these teams have massive amounts of change. I think the Niners have a little bit more change, but they do have the established head coach. It's like if you want to flip these two teams, I have no arguments or debates about that. I think they're both in the same range where they're hoping that they can win 9 or 10 games, but I think 8 or 9 might be a little bit more realistic, and they both play in the same conference, so it's really possible that either the Cowboys or the Niners are going to miss the playoffs this season. I would not be shocked by that at all. And I also do think the Cowboys, because of their division, by the way, they do play two top teams twice a year in terms of the Eagles and Commanders. I do think they'll have a worse record than the Niners overall. So I do think the Cowboys probably are going to miss the playoffs, but I think they're kind of a better team than their record may be by the end of the year. Let's talk about the positions overall. Getting Dak back healthy obviously means they have an improved quarterback room. The addition of George Pickens, obviously, wide receiver gets better. Running back, you lose Rico Dowdle. I really don't understand that decision because the Panthers did not pay him a lot of money at all. Rico Dowdle had over 1,300 yards from scrimmage last season. I don't care if you don't think he's that good of a player. He's better than anybody you have right now. So I don't like that move. They get worse at running back. Tight end remains the same. Offensive line, just losing Zach Martin in and of itself makes it worse offensive or worse overall. But I do like the addition of Tyler Booker. But just for that one reason, I have to say they get worse on the offensive line. Defensive line, you lose Carl Lawson and Chauncey Golston. You bring in Ezraku and Dante Fowler. I think it could be better, but just for now, because I don't know what Ezraku is going to do in his rookie season, I'm going to say it remains the same. Linebacker gets worse because of the concerns regarding DeMarvion Overshown. And safety remains the same. Cornerback, adding Siobhan Revel makes it better, but also just hopefully, DaRon Bland and Diggs playing 12 or more games. That's all I'm asking. Can they combine for 24 games next season? That's all I'm asking for. That should make it better because they only combined for 18 last year. So yeah, they need to get more healthy, especially on defense. Moving on to my number 16 team, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, they were 9-8, missed the playoffs though because they play in a really good division. Zach Taylor, going into his fifth, sixth year as the head coach, obviously took them to the Super Bowl in his rookie or second year as the head coach. Joe Burrow, obviously, we know how good he is. One of, if not the best quarterbacks in football when healthy. And next season, I have them right about where they were last year. I think their division rather gets slightly worse, I guess, depending on who you ask. But I really don't think their position changes a whole lot because they didn't really make a whole lot of changes. They kind of just bring back the same guys, and I think they're hoping that their coaching changes will kind of change how reprehensible their defense was last year. They were massively held back by how bad their defense was. Really a top 5 or 6 offense last year based on the numbers, but a bottom 5 or 6 defense last year. And brother, let me just this is the most important thing. If they do not re-sign Trey Hendrickson, because it still has not happened by the time I'm recording this video, but if they do not re-sign Trey Hendrickson, this is the worst defense in football, and it's going to cost them at least 2 or 3 games. Because honestly, if you were to ask me, would I rather have Trey Hendrickson or any other combination of players on the Bengals defense combined, give me Trey Hendrickson. Like if you were to propose a trade to me as a Seahawks fan, would you rather have Trey Hendrickson or would you rather have Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight, Dax Hill, name any other Logan Wilson? Give me Trey Hendrickson. I just he is more valuable than the rest of their defense combined, and they are refusing to bring him back. It is my and also just goes to show why the Bengals are just still, even with Joe Burrow, one of the worst organizations in the league. They are the only team who are pretty much trying to cheat their first round pick, Shamar Stewart. I don't like the Shamar Stewart pick. I'm not high on him at all. But they put language in his contract that he did not ask for, that they also did not put in their previous first round pick contract, where they're trying to screw over their first round pick, Shamar Stewart, pretty much. And he is refusing to play, refusing to sign, all that. So they're having controversy with their own first round pick because they just do not know how to run a fucking organization. The Bengals are a shit show with Joe Burrow and an amazing offense. That's what the situation is. Let's get into what they were last year. one of the only teams where their quarterback was perfectly healthy, which is very good because Joe Burrow obviously has dealt with some injuries in his career. But man, he was amazing last year. He was fully healthy. He was out there, and brother, he was dealing. And that's with one of the worst offensive lines in football, by the way. He was absolutely cooking, led the league in passing yards, touchdowns, all that. Through less than 10 interceptions. I cannot stress just how good Joe Burrow is. He is absolutely exceptional. And oh, by the way, they had a triple crown winner in Jamar Chase, one of the best receiving seasons ever last season. So, I mean, what do I even say that has not been said? This Bengals offense is incredible. T. Higgins had 900 yards and 10 touchdowns in just 12 games. They're exceptional. Chase Brown, by the way, not a lot of love being shown his way, but I really like what I saw out of him last year. 1,350 yards and 11 touchdowns. I think he did a lot of work as a receiver out of the backfield, a real key contributor to what made this offense so good last season. Also, Mike Gesicki kind of reviving his career in Cincinnati, over 650 yards for him, by the way. And also, Andre Yoshivash. For some reason, Jermaine Burton got a lot of talk and attention as like a third round pick, like number 100 overall for the Bengals. I don't know why he gets so much attention. Andre Yoshivash with nearly 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's the real third receiver on this team. He should be getting way more attention than guys like fucking Jermaine Burton, who's not even he wasn't even top 10 in yards last year on the Bengals. So I don't know who's paying him so much attention. But yeah, just look at their top five: Yoshivash, Gesicki, Higgins, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase. That is an elite group of weapons, and any team in the league could make shit happen with those guys. So offensively, in terms of their weapons, in terms of their guys at the top, I have no complaints. Where I have some massive complaints is that they might have possibly the worst offensive line in football. Let me break it down for you very quickly here. They have the worst offensive guard in football, and Alex Kappa, I believe his name was last. They get rid of him, thankfully. So he's not back, but I mean, that does not fix all of their issues here. If I may scroll over to the Bengals here. Okay. Left tackle. Let me actually go to their offensive line quickly so I can just expand on this for a second. Left tackle. Orlando Brown, he returns. He missed a lot of time, only played about 60% of their snaps last year. He was bad, though. He was actually very bad. Not just below average. He was a solid pass protector. Really bad against the run, though. And even in his limited action, he was below average. So if that's like their premier guy that they're paying a lot of money to, by the way. So that's a shockingly bad season for Orlando Brown last year. Cordell Volson is not there. He's still there, actually, but it looks like Dylan Fairchild, their third round pick out of Georgia, is going to be their new left guard. That's good because Cordell Volson was also bad last year. Ted Karras returns as their center. I mean, he was a good pass protector. Only allowed 2 sacks over 1,100 snaps for them last season. Only allowed 2 sacks. Not a great run blocker, but he was a really good pass protector. Average to above average at the center position. They add in Lucas Patrick at the right guard position to replace Cody Ford, who was terrible last year. Um, and Lucas Patrick for the Saints last year was also average to above average. So if Fairchild can play good as a rookie, then you would have three average interior offensive linemen, in my opinion. Then Amarius Mims, the former first round pick, in his rookie season as a tackle, about what you would expect. He was not terrible, which I give him credit for, but he did not shine in really any aspect. Also missed about potentially 300 snaps, so he did miss like 3 games worth. Actually, more than that. He missed time, but there is not a single player on this Bengals offensive line who I can say is good. I mean, you would assume Orlando Brown rather, just because of his name is the best, but he was not good last season. So every single offensive line that I look at here is either a rookie, is new, or was average last year. So it's like, and I made this mistake with the Bears offensive line last season. I looked around, I said, oh, average, above average, it's not bad. I am learning that whatever I think of an offensive line, they play a level below that. So if I'm thinking that the Bengals offensive line is average, I'm going to assume that they're going to be bad next season. Um, and yeah, I have massive concerns. But here's the thing: they had a really bad offensive line last season, and that did not stop Joe Burrow from absolutely cooking. So maybe it just doesn't matter. Like maybe they are just going to be amazing regardless offensively. So It's weird. It's really weird that the Bengals are just able to overcome how bad their offensive line is, and it just does not matter. Now, the rest of the offense remains pretty much identical. They get back Chase Brown. Zach Moss returns as their backup. They also retain Mike Gesicki, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Yoshi Vosh. Their top three receivers all come back. This offense is identical. They're just hoping their offensive line cannot be terrible. So, I mean, fuck it. I mean, I don't mind that. So yeah, I still expect this Bengals offense to be really, really good. And they even stole some games last year, like the game against the Ravens. Did they beat the Ravens both times? I think they did, unless they had two great games versus the Ravens last year, but they also beat the Ravens in Baltimore last year just because, first of all, they couldn't guard Jamar Chase, and this offense was just like what's it called? Like they were just unstoppable last year. So they stole some games against some teams who were noticeably better than them. So I expect this offense to be able to bail them out of several key scenarios here. Now, defensively, let's talk about exactly how bad they are outside of Trey Henderson. Because here's the problem I have: they didn't make many additions. They did make a change at defensive coordinator. They bring in Al Golden, who, if I'm not mistaken, was the defensive coordinator of Notre Dame last year, who was a good defensive team in college. But they are assuming that their DC is going to pretty much just fix their defense. They did not make hardly any personnel changes. Now, also, the day I'm recording this, they got rid of Jermaine Pratt. They released him, but our lads didn't change the depth chart yet. So just in your mind, assume that Jermaine Pratt is also gone. So pretty much an identical defense. They do add Shamar Stewart. You hope he can play for them if they fix his contract. Also, you now assume Demetrius Knight is going to be their starter at linebacker. Also, bringing Oren Burks from Philadelphia. So this is the thing. When I look at the team, right, especially the secondary, I'm going to start with the secondary. I see some talented guys. I look at DJ Turner, former second round pick. Cam Taylor Britt has his moments. Dax Hill, former first round pick. Jordan Battle, former third round pick out of Alabama. Geno Stone obviously had a really good year with the Ravens 2 years ago. I feel like with the right coaching, also got Josh Newton, had some moments last year as a rookie. With the right coaching, I feel like it could be a really good young secondary. But it just that was not the case at all on paper or just on the field last year. They were bad last year, but maybe it's because they have no pass rush outside of Trey Henderson. I mean, look at the try and find me a guy outside of Trey Henderson. They had so so Trey Henderson, right? He had 17 and a half sacks last year. By the way, in 2023, he also had 17 and a half sacks. The next highest guy had three. Three. Sorry. Joseph Osai had five, but after him it was three. I believe the Bengals as a team had 36 sacks. That would mean, if you're keeping track here, that Trey Henderson had nearly half of the entire team sacks. And oh, by the way, he also had 19 tackles for a loss. I don't know, man. It's without making any major additions, it's tough for me to believe that these guys are going to be able to step up and take over. I mean, they also lose Sam Hubbard to retirement, I believe. They get rid of Mike Hilton, Von Bell, who I guess were both bad for them last year. It's just I don't. They lose Akeem Davis Gaither and Jermaine Pratt, two of their top three tacklers. I don't know, man. Could Al Golden unlock something, especially with the secondary, and kind of turn things around? I think so, but I mean, what's the best case scenario? And by the way, we're making the major assumption that they bring back Trey Henderson. And oh, by the way, for the third straight season, Trey Henderson plays like a first team All Pro. To assume that a player can even do that for 3 years in a row is insane. But I mean, that's the expectation. If Trey, God forbid, if Trey Henderson gets hurt because he's been an Iron Man the last 2 years, or just takes a slight step back, they're screwed. They're the worst defense in football. So I don't know, man. They're banking on coaching and not a whole lot else for the defense. So, yeah, I have major concerns for, just basically running back the exact same team. For the team like the Bengals that missed the playoffs, they did not make nearly enough personnel changes, in my opinion. So, yeah, I definitely have my reservations in regards to the Bengals. And you see that here. I mean, quarterback, same quarterback. Wide receiver, same wide receivers. Running back, same running backs. Tight end, same running backs. Offensive line, you make additions, but I don't know if they're going to be better or worse. And I also don't know if Amarius Mims and Orlando Brown are going to be fully healthy next year. So offensive line's the same, which is bad. Defensive line, well, you add Shamar Stewart, I guess. You hope he's an addition. You didn't really lose anybody worth, noting. So just based off Shamar Stewart alone, the problem is he didn't get any sacks in college. So is he all of a sudden going to get sacks in the NFL? Who knows? Linebacker, you lose Jermaine Pratt, you add Demetrius Knight, remains about the same. Safety, cornerback, same group of guys. You just hope they play better. Got me stumbling all over the place talking about how bad the Bengals defense is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I have them at this top of this group of teams, but the reason I have them at the top, Cowboys and the Niners, they're not really elite anywhere. In my opinion, I think the Niners, hopefully, they hope they can have a top 10 offense, but the Bengals do have a top 5 or 6 offense. We know that for a fact. Their defense sucks, but if nothing else, assuming health, right? I assume health for everybody, but assuming health, I know the Bengals are going to be a dynamic, explosive offense that's going to be able to win them games. I can't say that about any of the other teams in this group that I'm talking about. So that's why I have the Bengals up here at the top. But overall, I don't think they made enough changes for me to think that they're going to change their results. I think the same thing, 9-10 wins. Maybe you make the playoffs, maybe you don't. So I don't know, man. That's going to be it for this video, though. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. I will be back very soon with the next group of teams. So thank you for watching.